Welcome. The Diddy trial is over, and he was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, but not the RICO charge or the sex trafficking charge. And I actually want to talk about what this might mean for Vince McMahon as well, because I think there's a mirror of Vince and Diddy that needs to be discussed. And I think this is going to have a real effect on Vince McMahon's civil trial and the idea of there may be a criminal trial. I definitely think that there's a significant amount of crossover in these two cases. And because of that, what happened in this case may reflect in the Vince McMahon case, as Vince and Diddy seemingly were engaging in the same kind of behaviors. They were rich and powerful men who took up, well, in Diddy's case, it was a little bit more predatory because the woman was significantly younger and just a significantly young woman. But in Vince's case, the woman was in her mid 30s, but she was younger than he was because he was in his 70s. But I think it's hard to make the argument that Janelle Grant was some naive young woman at almost 40 years old. But Cassie was like 20 or 21 or something like that when she got involved with Sean Combs. So it's a interesting parallel there. Also, there's a lot of other kinds of gangster stuff that's involved with Diddy's case that's not involved in the Vince McMahon case. But it's a lot of perverse sex, a lot of perversions from the person in question. And a lot of it seems to revolve around threesomes and wanting to watch other people have sex with their significant others, um, getting a thrill out of that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of parallels between Vince and Diddy that I think is going to be pretty substantial for people who think that there's going to be some opportunity of Vince McMahon going to prison, or Vince McMahon ending up in any sort of federal court for the situation with Janelle Grant, because it's virtually the same damn thing. The only difference is, at least to our knowledge, Vince did not hire any prostitutes to have sex with Janelle Grant. Instead, he enlisted John Laurinaitis, and he tried to enlist Brock Lesnar. And maybe the celebrity doctor was involved with this as well. We don't know how far that guy goes into this. But there's a lot of overlap between these two cases. And I'm actually quite surprised that Diddy's got away with the sex trafficking. I'm actually quite surprised he did. I want the jurors to stand up and talk about this. But the prostitutes were pretty obvious, you know. Now, when you look at the breakdown, it says sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. He did not force any of the prostitutes. He did not coerce any of the prostitutes. He did not defraud any of the prostitutes. They were paid to have sex with Cassie and this other woman, and they did that, and they got paid, and that was it. There was no. He didn't force these guys. Yes, he paid for them to hop on a flight and fly to where they were, and that's the transportation and prostitution part, because these guys had to hop on a plane to find him, and but he paid for the hotel room. He provided the girl. He didn't pay the girl. She was getting gifts and all sorts of stuff already. All she had to do was please him sexually, and it was established that the freak offs were part of his sexuality. You know, this was something. This was a kink that he was into, and like all narcissists, he got lost in his own desires. And and really didn't take into account how his desires were hurting or harming other people. So I fully understand why he ended up in this situation. And I do agree that this was a waste of time. I do agree that this was a waste of taxpayer money. I think that this was basically done for pressure. There was a lot of pressure on the government and on somebody to do something about Diddy because there were so many stories. And then Cassie's lawsuit was so detailed and vicious, even though it was only out for a few hours before he paid it off. It was so gross that most people were kind of like, "Oh my goodness, there has to be some real criminal stuff happening here." But it never reached the point that everybody else was looking for. You know, there was a lot of people talking about pedophilia. There was people thinking that other rappers were involved. It turns out that the government didn't have any, unless they got that kind of information and they torpedoed it on their own by not bringing it up. But I don't see why you wouldn't bring any of that stuff up. You know, it's interesting. It's very interesting how he managed to slip by in this case. Now he was denied bail. He had been in jail for the entirety of the trial, and he's going to stay in jail until October when he has his sentencing. But I think the judge made him stay in jail because he's going to let him go. That's what I'm thinking. I think he's going to get time served, and that's probably going to be it. And he's probably going to walk away with these 2 felonies, and that's that. Now, in terms of what did a great deal of damage to the case, I think there were certain strategic questions that Puff's lawyers asked Cassie and the other young lady about how the freak offs were put together, and who was doing what, and it made them seem like they were more involved than most people were willing to accept. You know, the other young lady who claimed that she did a freak off, she set it up. I mean, Cassie was setting it up too. She was finding hotel rooms. They were looking up the guys online on Instagram. They were willing participants in large parts of the freak offs, right? The difference being Diddy was the one paying for it. So he ended up being the one who got caught up in all this because it was his money that was being used to pay these male whores in these situations. But it was clear to me that we can't tell when Cassie or the other young lady who they say is Daphne Joy, we don't know when they stopped being willing participants in the freak offs. And it's hard to say when they stopped being willing participants in the freak offs. And that's the problem here. They went from being you are told that they were victims, and then you see that there's some willing participation. There's text messages of them enjoying it. There's text messages, I'm sorry, of them setting up the freak offs. There's conversations where the young lady is saying, I'm always ready for a freak off. It's insane. So when do you decide that she's a victim? When did she become a victim? If she engaged in countless freak offs, certainly more than one, how do we know that she was coerced or forced? For instance, I'm looking at this tweet thread here. Daphne Joy, who is Jane Doe, promised Diddy an all-star party. And the prosecutor said, "What's that?" So she says, "I'd bring the top 3 guys in the same night." And she said, and the prosecutor asked her why. She says, "I was with my lover and he liked that. I told him I have to be awake at 8 a.m. on Sunday. I said the last time I got sick." She said he felt hesitation from my all-star party. He says, "Does your punani hurt? You're not being straight with me." She set it up. This was her idea. How is it sex trafficking when you engage in this sort of stuff and it's her idea? How is this sex trafficking? Okay. Now the whole time they're trying to establish here that Diddy will get mad if I don't do certain things a certain way, right? But they're not establishing that this is sex trafficking outside of him just being a pervert. So on June 6th, the prosecutor was talking to Daphne Joy, who is, of course, 50 Cent's baby mama. And they asked her how many times she traveled to Las Vegas. She says once on Sean's plane. So she's saying, "I went to Las Vegas. Sean paid for me to go to Las Vegas." And she says he was hosting an event. He wanted entertainment for the night. We had that. The prosecutor says, "What do you mean?" She says, "And entertain, we had sex." Okay. Did Sean call you a freak? She said, "Yes. He wanted me to be wild and sexual." She said, the prosecutor says, "Did you ask Sean if the entertainers could wear condoms?" She said, "Yes, the first time, and then another. Sean guilt tripped me out of it. It was not something he wanted to see. He did not want to see the entertainer wear a condom. He did not want to see the rubber," she said. "Did you raise it ever when sober in a hotel room?" She said, "Yes." He said, "Was it ever recorded?" She said, "Yes." Now, they played some audio, and they're talking about her having sex with this guy, and Diddy is watching, right? None of this is sex trafficking. This is a man's cuck fetish. He has a cuck fetish. She's not being paid to participate in this. The man is being paid to participate in this. And that's the illegal part. Everybody thinks that Diddy is sex trafficking Cassie. But she was not being paid for this. These girls were in relationships with Diddy. No different than any other weirdo who has a kink. This was his kink. He wanted some guys who could be disposable penises so that he can watch them rail these girls that he liked. Of course he got away with this. GK Aaron says, and my thing is, why even bring up a RICO case if there's nothing to convict them? Like a one-man RICO. Come on now. Like clearly they were clearly trying to jam this man up. Now, in my opinion, and this is what I thought was going to happen. I thought we were going to get a Weinstein. I thought we were going to get a Cosby. I thought they were going to say guilty, of all charges. And then you'd be like, yep, Diddy is cooked. And then a year or two would go by, and they would say, oh, there was some kind of procedural error here, some mistake about the judge here, and Diddy's going to get out. That's what I thought. Because it didn't make sense. One man RICO, and then I did not see that the freak offs was funded by any of the corporations that he worked for. Remember when they did the whole, they had this, it was the lawsuit that I think that other young man put out, where he was talking about Diddy's his attendants and all these sorts of people were involved with these things. And it made it sound like there was, this really freakish cult that was going on. But it turns out that at the end of the day, the only thing the government brought was that Diddy was a freaky, disgusting, oily pervert who wanted to watch his girlfriends have sex with prostitutes. That's it. No man should go to jail for that. No man should go to jail for that. It's weird. It's gross. And he should go to jail for being abusive, but the statute of limitations had already passed on that video, which a lot of people are hung up on the video. The video was irrelevant to the trial. Absolutely irrelevant. It's a real gross thing, and it's not defending Diddy to say that he was overcharged. It's not defending Diddy to say that this is what he's been arrested with is bullshit. It's not a real crime. He intimidated some people. What was this, Kid Cudi? He intimidated that guy, blew up his car. Or at least Kid Cudi claims he blew up his car. There were some really terrible things coming out of this trial. Some really terrible stuff. A lot of it is salacious and gross. Almost none of it is illegal, though. But this is what happens when we get a peek into the sexuality of people. That we're not really all that interested in people's sexuality anyway. But this is what happens. The man liked watching his girls have sex with men. It's weird and gross. I'm not gonna lie to you. But it's not sex trafficking. WG Phil says at that point it's obvious after Diddy hit Cassie, she went back to him. Here's the thing. I said this on Twitter and I mean it. Cassie was nothing more than a young concubine, right? And she was treated like kings and emperors treated concubines in the past. That's exactly how Cassie was treated. She was taken care of. She was able to live in the big house. She got whatever she wanted. But she had to go through a little bit of hell to get all the stuff that she wanted. She wanted all this stuff. Like they say, the devil can't tempt you with things that you do not want. Cassie wanted to be a singer. Diddy could fund her career. And when her records weren't selling and weren't doing very well, she could always just have sex with Diddy and get whatever she wanted. This man has been funding, I don't know how old she is now, but he has been funding her lifestyle, her entire lifestyle, since she was in her early 20s. It's been over a decade that this girl has been attached to Diddy in one way or another. And then she walked out of this thing with $30 million, 20 from Diddy and 10 from the hotel. She's never going to have to work again a day in her life. She was rewarded, essentially, for being a gopher. She was treated like a medieval concubine. If Diddy really cared about her, All the time they spent together, they would have had a family. He wanted her for these freak off parties. He didn't want to have any kids with her. If I remember correctly, he had kids after he messed with Cassie. He didn't see Cassie as being his wife or anything like that. This is what Cassie was there for, to do the freak nasty shit he probably didn't want to do with a real woman. Of course, she wasn't a good singer. She was beautiful, though. She was gorgeous. And that's all Diddy cared about. She was treated like a medieval concubine. Except these days, these women get to walk away with all the cash and prizes. All the money and everything that Diddy ever gave her, she kept it. And she got $20 million more dollars, and then $10 million more. And we're supposed to believe that she was a victim. And the only thing she wanted was stuff. Now, maybe over the course of 10 years, she matured. She realized all this stuff was a mistake. It wasn't worth it. The constant STDs, the physical abuse. This should be, for most people, it should be a cautionary tale for young women who get into the music business or get into any entertainment business or anything in general. When you're shacking up with some significantly older man, you are going to take some L's. Either he's going to be married, he's only going to be able to see you on the weekend, or you're his plaything. He puts you up somewhere. He pays for your cars, hair, nails. You can fly all over the globe on his dime, but he might slap you. He might punch you. He might kick you. He might ask that you do drugs. He might ask that you have sex with strange men. And it might be like, a situation where she was a frog in boiling water. That's just the best way for me to put it, is that she was in this situation where she thought, hey, this is great. And then slowly but surely things got more and more ramped up. And once she's already in the pot, it is what it is, right? I can understand that. But ultimately, she stayed after the abuse. She stayed after she got STDs again and again. At what point do we say she's responsible for her own behavior? Do we ever say she's responsible for her own behavior? These young women are all about this stuff. We see them all the time on OnlyFans. These women who can't possibly fund the lifestyle that they have on Instagram and all this. What do you think they're doing? These chicks with no talent whatsoever, not a brain in their head, but they're on yachts, and every day is summer. Hair, nails done, look great, just chilling on the yacht. And there's no hide or hair of this woman having a real job. What do you think she's doing other than tricking? Of course she's tricking. And we don't teach young women to make better decisions. We say that you were taken advantage of, you were exploited. No, she was not taken advantage of. She was not exploited. There's another saying that says, what you're not changing, you're choosing. Every day that she engaged in a freak off of her own volition, every day she woke up with this man, she was deciding that whatever benefit she was getting from Diddy was more important than her self-respect, than any physical pain, any discomfort from STDs, or anything else that she had going. And then we just naturally assume, of course, that what drives Cassie to file a lawsuit is the amount of abuse that she faced, instead of that perhaps she was frustrated or angry about something more personal. That Diddy never saw her as somebody for him to lay up with forever. If Diddy would have married Cassie, he probably never would have been in this situation at all, period. They'd have continued doing freak offs together forever. But he didn't marry Cassie. He let Cassie go. He let Cassie have boyfriends while they were doing the freak offs, because he didn't give a fuck about Cassie. She was a toy. That was it. And instead of teaching young women, this is what you should learn, that man did not care about that girl. He gave her what she wanted, and he took from her what he wanted. That's it. This is the lesson, not, oh, poor Cassie. She walks away with $30 million. On Instagram, there's tons of women out here tricking, because we don't teach young women that this is a problem. This is something you should not be doing. We tell them you can get cash and prizes and sympathy, instead of saying, look, take your cash and prizes and get out of here. We're not putting this guy in jail because of this. The moment if I were a prosecutor or whatever, the moment I see text messages where she is setting up the freak offs, I'm like, we're going to lose. What reasonable person is going to be able to look at these text messages, see that she's picking the man, she's giving the man directions on what to do to her? The only thing Puff is doing is sitting there. Well, he's kind of orchestrating it because he wants to have the freak off. He's telling her, this is what I want you to do. Like when he, finishes on you, come rub it all over my chest or whatever. But she's engaged in this thing. Why would the fact that this was even brought to trial is unfair? If you couldn't get him on the domestic violence, what about all the drugs that you found? What about the guns that you found? He wasn't even charged for having all these drugs and all these guns. He didn't care about that girl, man. Like, that's the real message. The real message is he didn't care about Cassie. She was a toy. He picked her up and put her down at his leisure. And once he put her down for good, she got mad. I mean, that part's obvious, right? She finally moved on, apparently got married and had a baby, realized that she was never really going to go back to Diddy, realized that he didn't want her back, and decided to cash that one final chip, $20 million. And then got him on federal trial, in a federal trial. And everybody's running around trying to treat her like a victim. Look, I can't tell people what to think and what to do. But to me, it was obvious from the word go. As soon as I see that she was engaging in the freak offs, I was done with it. And most people were too. And it's just fair. If we're going to treat these young women like adults, if we're going to say they're adults, they can drive and vote and buy alcohol and do whatever they want, They can make bad decisions just like everybody else. This was a terrible decision, but it was a decision she made every single day. And you can blame drugs, alcohol, drink, the temptations, the coercion. You can say whatever you want. She was getting sent home to her family, and she was leaving them to come back to do freak offs. She had a boyfriend, 2 or 3 boyfriends. She would leave them, come back to do freak offs. She had a boyfriend, the guy that she married. She was having sex with Diddy while that guy was calling her on the phone. That's it. What is the case here? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why are you wasting the taxpayer time and money? This is a waste of time. WWE TNA says the feds failed to get the diddler, just like they failed to get Vince, failed to get Michael Jackson. The government being incompetent is always hilarious. Yeah, see, the thing is that they try very hard on high profile cases, but a lot of times what they're going off of is really terrible information. And a lot of it is fake. And a lot of this stuff, the Michael Jackson thing was also triggered by a lawsuit, right? Somebody files a lawsuit, there's immediately some kind of criminal investigation, right? They did 2 different criminal investigations into Michael Jackson and found out. It's a weird time, man. It's very weird. But that should tell you that there's really something up. When you don't hear about this stuff until somebody files a lawsuit, then there's something weird. Now, there's been a lot of rumors about Diddy. There's a lot of rumors about Vince too. There's a lot of rumors about Diddy being a pervert. Everybody knew that, so nobody was surprised about that part. But the level of his depravity is what surprised most people, I think. WT Info says she was cooked the moment they tried to paint her as an abused, troubled victim, forced to stay, but admitted she was cheating on Diddy with Cuddy and Alex all at once. Yeah, he was letting her do whatever she wanted. He didn't care about that girl. She was going back and forth because it didn't matter at the end of the day. The only thing Diddy did want control of her, no doubt about that. And then he realized, I really just want the freak off. Like, she's a really sexy chick. It's like watching a live porno. Some people get off on that kind of stuff. That's fine. If I can take her to the red carpet, she's a beautiful date. But ultimately, she's just a toy. She's a chew toy. She got a little old, even though she's still very young, and he was done with her. So if he was a prosecutor, he'd be like, are you Jelaine Maxwell? Most people came to that conclusion a week in. I think the government wanted Diddy to take a plea. He never took the plea. So their hands were forced. They tried to bluff him by saying, take this plea or we're going to bury you. He was like, do your worst. And then they came with this weak shit. This shit was weak. He said the only thing GK Aaron says, the only thing this case accomplished is embarrassing the girls Diddy was with, because to be honest, nobody really cared about Diddy being a pervert. Right. It was expected that Diddy was a pervert. It was suspected that he was a pervert. Everybody had an idea that he was a pervert. It wasn't a surprise. There was a question in here about Vince somewhere. Oh, here it is. WG Field 2 says, I wonder if Janelle is going to drop the suit, seeing how this played out. Here's the thing. Cassie walked away with $20 million. That's probably going to be the price tag to get Vince out of this jam. She walked away with $20 million from Diddy, $10 million from the hotel. So let's extrapolate from that. She's probably going to want 15, 20 million from Vince, then probably 15, 20 million from WWE. And then this whole thing will be closed. Now, WWE and Vince are not in any way incentivized to settle at the moment because the judge still has not decided whether this thing is going to go to arbitration or not. If it ends up in public federal court, they'll probably just go ahead and settle this thing because then they're already behind the 8 ball. But if it ends up in arbitration, you'll probably never know when it's over. Just like the Kelly Klein situation over in Ring of Honor. That thing ended up in arbitration. Nobody even knew when it ended. But I wouldn't be surprised if her lawyer, Ann Callis, is watching this right now saying, oh my God, Diddy got away with it. What's going to happen if I have to put Janelle Grant on a public trial? They'll probably settle just to prevent that. They don't want people seeing her face, asking her a bunch of questions. They don't want that. They don't want that at all. Trust me. They're fishing for a settlement. They're bluffing. They want a settlement bad. But it seems like Vince doesn't want to pay it. He wants to fight it. But I think if they fail to get it moved to arbitration, then they'll settle. They don't want this stuff dragging out forever. Yeah, because something I knew from the jump that she was pegging, like even though the Vince case happened before Diddy, she was pegging Janelle Grant's case to the Cosbys, to Weinstein, to that situation, right? And then she started, because that included essentially the organization that they worked for. Well, not Bill Cosby, because it would be different, but Weinstein from his agencies and all this sort of stuff. That was the connection. You know, taking advantage of all these young women and all this sort of stuff. But I guarantee you she was paying very close attention to this Diddy trial. To the questions that were asked, to the evidence that they had, to the witnesses and when they were brought in. Look, the thing is, there is far more to crush Diddy than there was for Vince. Because I think she unloaded on Vince. People were like, oh, look at the text messages. Look at the text messages. We only seen one side of those text messages. We didn't see what she was sending to Vince. And then when we did see that she was writing him love letters and stuff like that, there was 100 excuses why she was sending him love letters. I'm like, yeah, there's probably more stuff like that floating around out there. There's probably times where she was meeting up with John Laurinaitis without Vince even knowing. I can almost guarantee it. Everybody knows what these things are. Why people try to be salacious and play this stuff out in the media is ridiculous. We see this stuff for what it is. These old rich guys hook up with younger women and use them as sex toys. She gets whatever she wants out of it. All the gifts and flowers and trips and free surgery, and Diddy was funding her music career even though she couldn't fucking sing. Vince McMahon gave this girl a job she wasn't even qualified for, just to get her regularly on payroll, because he could do that. And it might have been something she asked for. Just think about that for a second. He is such a simp that not only is he giving her gifts, but if she wants something for herself, let's say, like Cassie wanted her music career for herself, Diddy wasn't going to make any fucking money off Cassie. He already knew that. But he gave her studio time and all these paid writers and producers and all this sort of stuff so she can have something to do. She has to make it seem like she's going forward in life, like she's trying to accomplish something on her own. It's the same thing when Vince put Janelle Grant in his goddamn legal department. I'm going to make it seem like you're doing something with your life and not just laying around like a bump on a log. But you're going to be around here when one of us get the itch. We're not going to put you too far away. They could have put her in WWE headquarters in fucking England or something like that if they wanted to. They could have got rid of her. If he really didn't want to deal with her, he could have put her, like when he put her over at the XFL for a while. Like rich people who don't want to deal with you, but they don't want to fire you because you have something on them, they know how to get rid of you. They'd have sent you home and told you you're on a special assignment. Keep paying them, but she's never going to leave the fucking house. Like, these people know what they're doing because they've likely done it with other people before. Like, Diddy has done this stuff with multiple women. We only know about 2, but do you think that he only stopped at 2? No, he probably had way more than 2. Just like we know Vince probably had more than just Janelle Grant. That's why all these other women was filing lawsuits. They probably was in the same goddamn boat. He was using them as sex toys, and then he got tired of them and cashed them out and said, go about your business. Leave me alone. Get out of here. Take your cash and prizes and leave. Don't let my wife find out. Because you're a toy. This is not a relationship. This is a transaction. But if you're Ann Callis, so you're watching this and you're saying, I don't want to put my client through that. Oh, absolutely, buyer's remorse. Seller's remorse. So like technically this stuff isn't prostitution because the man is saying that there's a level of relationship there, right? It's not a deep, serious, meaningful relationship where they're telling each other their deepest, darkest secrets and they're planning a wedding and all. No, it's not that deep. But it's enough where this woman is staying with him. Like, I wonder if Janelle Grant and Vince have pictures together of them going on dates and stuff. Because if they don't, then you really know she was just a hump buddy, right? At least Diddy and Cassie were taking pictures together. Everybody knew they were public. But Vince is married, so there's likely no pictures of the two of them together. For this very reason, that he didn't want his wife to know. But it was clear that he was funding her lifestyle. Just like Cassie was funding, Diddy was funding Cassie's lifestyle. Vince was funding Janelle Grant's lifestyle. It's an interesting, very interesting case. I wonder how this thing is going to turn out. Me Too, not about stopping predators. It's a scam. And of course, it was a scam. The whole point of Me Too was to target powerful males in entertainment and replace them with females. That was the whole point. Either to get blackmail on them so that you can leverage them into doing what you want them to do, like they did with Neil deGrasse Tyson. How he was basically science guy, and then he got hit with a Me Too. Now he's tweeting out woke shit all the time, right? But then again, then there's the Weinsteins, the Tavis Smileys, and a bunch of other guys who got nuked from orbit from Me Too stuff, and they were replaced either by effeminate males that could be easily controlled or by women. That was the whole point of this thing. Let's see how many people we can kill off and replace them with females. It's exactly what they did with Vince, right? Soon as Vince was nuked, they replaced him with Stephanie. And then Vince fought back and Stephanie left. She took off. And then Vince sold the company. As punishment for likely Stephanie and Triple H and or somebody that's involved with them being involved with him getting ousted. But that's a story that we'll probably never get a hold of, at least not in time. It'll probably come out when Vince dies. That somebody on the board, somebody in the know, is the one who slipped that thing out there and made everybody know. Why doesn't she go to? Because she does not have any gut. She doesn't have any evidence. She has. The thing about all this stuff is these women do not want to lose their access to these powerful men, these jobs that they want, this lifestyle that they want. That's why they don't go to the cops. You can abuse them, you could beat them, you could verbally berate them, you could do whatever you want because they don't want to lose access. In a real relationship between real people, you're likely not going to get this kind of loyalty. Even if a woman stays with a man who beats on her, eventually she's either going to kill him, kill herself, or she's going to leave. But when he's rich, it's harder to leave because you want stuff. But now you can just claim you were raped, claim you were sex trafficked, cash and prizes, public sympathy, and you go. I did not see Cassie's face this entire trial. I don't think that paparazzi took one single fucking picture of Cassie. I don't know what she looks like today. I saw pictures of that other woman. I saw pictures of Kanye when he showed up for like an hour. I did not see one fucking picture of Cassie today. I mean, of what she looked like during this trial. Now, maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention, but it was clear to me that she was being protected by the media. You're not seeing any recent pictures of Janelle Grant. That picture they got, that one fucking picture they got of Janelle Grant, looks like she was fresh out of high school, or at least in her early 20s. Why are they not showing you what these people look like? All this stuff is behind closed doors. It's all shady and secretive. The accusation is loud. It's like a Muslim call to prayer. They're yelling at it from a speaker. But when it comes to all these other things, is we need to protect the identity of the victim. We need to protect the victim's rights. We need to protect the victim. We need to protect the victim. But every little piece of gossip is public on the man's side. But this is this is part of the problem. If the woman would have just said, look, I was in a relationship with Vince McMahon / Diddy, where we did a lot of perverted stuff. But here's X, Y, and Z, why I think I should be paid more money. Or X, Y, and Z, I think this is a problem. And then just treat it like it was a business transaction gone wrong, which is what Janelle Grant's trying to say. Oh, she wasn't sex trafficked until she wasn't paid, right? She didn't get that first payment or that second payment, whatever it was. All of a sudden, she was sex trafficked. She wasn't sex trafficked before then, though. She was willingly signing off, and that was it. But now she realizes how much money all these other women are getting. And that jealousy is kicking in. Like, wait a minute, you gave this woman how much money? You gave this other woman how much money? There's chicks out there. Cassie just walked away again with $20 million from Diddy. Any chick that's in a financial situation right now is sitting back, tallying it up in her mind how much she might be able to get from this guy in 5 or 10 years by just turning around and saying she was raped. They may even do it after you die, like Earl. I'm about to say Earl Hefner, Hugh Hefner. All of a sudden, she's a Playboy playmate. She's loving life, hanging out in the grotto. Don't have to do a fucking thing. Don't have to lift a pinky and is living like a princess. Then all of a sudden, Hugh Hefner dies. Oh, the world was so terrible there. It was so horrible. Is that because the money got cut off? Because you don't have access to the grotto anymore? This stuff is unfair, man. Dennis King says, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Nick Khan or Stephanie who told on this. I don't think it was Stephanie. But it all the signs point to Stephanie, I think. I think all signs point to Stephanie because she took advantage of Vince being ousted. And she continued to trumpet Vince even after he was ousted, right? So she kind of put that old, my dad is going to retire. See you later, dad. We love you, dad. Now I'm going to be boss chick, right? And then Vince came back, and instead of just sliding back in her role and back into her position, because everybody assumed, I know I was too, I assumed as well that Stephanie was just a placeholder for Vince. I always thought Vince was coming back, or that Vince would operate the company through Stephanie, you know, like he would just use her as a proxy, much like he uses Bruce Pritchard as a proxy, right? When Vince left completely and then sold the company, that told me that Stephanie had to be involved with this in some way. That was a dead giveaway because he took the company from Stephanie. And it was clear from jump he was grooming her before she was on TV. When she was modeling in the catalog, he was grooming her to take over the company. That's why he had her in creative, even though she sucked. Even that's why he had her as the head writer, even though she couldn't fucking write. He moved her to not talent relations, but chief brand officer. And she wasn't even doing a good job at that. And then she ended up being the fucking CEO. It was the natural progression of things. She would have gotten the chair if Vince would have died. But Vince was taking too long to die. And as usual, when people take too long to die and you're getting older yourself, you figure, fuck, either I'm going to retire or this guy's never going to give up the seat. She was what, 50? In her late 40s or something like that? How much longer was she going to sit back and wait? Something tells me for sure she was involved with this. I didn't want to think that way at first, but now I'm almost certain. Because when he sold the company, that told me he's fucking the kids. Selling the company is sticking it to the kids. Sticking it to Stephanie and Shane. Why would you do that? He probably knows that they betrayed him. So either they were directly involved or they were indirectly involved. You said Vince's ordeal was an inside job. Let's face it. The board wanted to oust Vince. This is the way they chose to do it. All those details came out every time WWE had a good news from 2022 to 2024. Yeah, it was clear that there were investors that was pushing for Vince to sell the company. Um, if you listen to some of the old quarterly conversations, there's a whole lot of this, um, a whole lot of what's going on. Is the company going to be sold? Especially when they brought Nick Khan on. When they hired Nick Khan, there was a lot of conversation about whether they were going to sell the company or not. But I think Vince was of course just happy running the company and wasn't really thinking about selling it. But there was tons of outside pressure, probably from Nick Khan, likely from the investors to sell the company. Now, do I think Stephanie wanted to sell it? No. Do I think Triple H wanted him to sell it? No. I don't think the family wanted him to sell it at all. But I think that the people that they invited into their midst, the Nick Khans and the investors, those people probably wanted him to sell it. And this was their way of getting what they wanted, just like you say. It's clear as hell that it was an inside job. Isn't Shane the only kid he's cool with? Yeah, it's interesting that now you see Vince and Shane hanging out. Like you never hear about Vince and Shane hanging out. Now they're hanging out all the time. Interesting. Stephanie talks about Vince all the time, but there ain't been no recent pictures of them together. I think there was a picture, wasn't it? This whole thing about Vince's birthday party, John Cena and Brock Lesnar and Undertaker showed up, but Stephanie and Shane didn't show up. Triple H wasn't there. At least I don't think he was there after he got ousted. Shane was watching Vince groom Stephanie, looking at the meme street posse like, "Why don't you want me, man?" I think Shane took the wrestling thing to heart. You know, it might have been better to leave it to Shane, but for some reason he's a girl dad. He probably had a soft spot for his daughter, and he gave Stephanie so much in terms of letting her write the shows, trusting her ideas, which she gets credit for the Evolution show because it wouldn't have happened probably without Stephanie politicking for it backstage. You know, that was probably why it happened in the first place. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, the Evolution. Why is Stephanie getting any credit?" Who do you think had Vince's ear? Michael fucking Hayes. Why do you think this show happened? Because Stephanie probably wanted it to happen, and she probably nagged the old man into doing it. It ain't happened because the fucking Bella twins got over. It ain't happened because the fans wanted it. He gave her a whole lot of space. But it's pretty obvious to me when he came back and immediately sold the company, he realized what was going on. Either A, he was pissed when they voted for him not to return. That pissed him off. But he was planning to sell the company and told them that when he was coming back. So it was absolutely his decision to sell the company because he found out something, likely in some kind of internal investigation. And then when he came back, a lot of the rats jumped off the ship. A lot of the board members left, and he forced one or two of them off and then replaced them. It's clear as hell to me that he was set up. He said R. Kelly be crying himself every night after this Diddy verdict. I think I still think that R. Kelly is gonna Something tells me that again, like I said, it's going to be it may be a little bit, but there's going to be a turnaround on that R. Kelly case, and they're going to be like, "Oh, we found this loophole that means that R. Kelly didn't get a fair trial or something like that," and they're going to end up letting him out. That's my opinion, though, because that's exactly what happened with Bill Cosby. Degenerate Sharingan says it should have been to the actual successor, but never understood why Vince never saw it. I'm sure there's something Vince saw in Shane. He probably just didn't see enough of himself in Shane. He probably wanted to see Shane was like him when he was with his dad. Like Vince had this sort of this alpha male mentality where he was this close from putting a pillow over his own dad's face in order to get the company. I wouldn't have been surprised if Vince Sr. would not have sold that company. He probably would have just magically not woken up one day. Like, and he just has that in his blood, it seems like. And he wanted to see that killer instinct from Shane, but Shane ain't got it. I think they said the one thing that Shane was a lot like Linda. I think that's where they was just kind of like, okay. But Stephanie is more like Vince. And this is absolutely a Vince move, utilizing the culture of the time to undercut the old man and move him out of the way. Yeah. I think if Vince McMahon chooses to retire in like 2021, you never hear about any of this stuff. Him and Janelle Grant probably sitting up in some luxury suite somewhere, and he's watching her have sex with John Laurinaitis, and he's telling Stephanie how to write fucking Raw or something like that. I don't even think this stuff happens in 2021 if he chose to retire, 3 or 4 years ago. If he chose to retire in like 2019, the only real blemish on his record is the Rita Chatterton thing and the very spooky Florida situation. You see, AJ3 says even if he won, the damage has been done. P Diddy is cooked. Oh yeah, the thing is, his his legacy is done. His name is mud. There's nothing left of Diddy, but he got his money, and he's going to keep making money. He owns a lot of people's catalogs, unless they nuke him from orbit, where they take control of his catalogs and stuff like that, which is probably what the point of all of this was to either bankrupt him or cripple him financially to the point where he had to start selling assets. Because again, this is what they did to Michael Jackson. He got sued. He had to spend tons of money in legal fees. Then he had to go on tour in order to try to make some money. And then he overdosed and died before he could make that money. He died in debt. And the company that he was in a war with when he was alive ended up with his assets. How does this keep happening? It's pretty clear that if not a setup, it is a very, very fortuitous situation for certain people. That they wanted control of the Michael Jackson name, image, and likeness. They wanted control over all the assets that he owned, which includes like the Beatles, and I think he owned Elvis. And you got to ask yourself a question: how is this guy broke when he owned the Beatles catalog? How is he broke when he owned Elvis's catalog? You hear Elvis and the Beatles all over the place. How is he broke when he got paid every time these songs were played? Should be a question for you. Financially, he should have been fine. And there's always going to be a certain level of debt for a guy like a Michael Jackson, because these guys, they stock and trade is debt. It's not that he couldn't pay it; it's that as he was getting older, it was getting harder to pay it. He certainly could have paid it, but how many times does this happen where a performer dies and you find out he died in debt, and then the label assume his assets, and all of a sudden, oh, now his debt's gone. Tupac died in debt. I don't think Interscope got his assets though. I think his mom did, and they set up some kind of thing. I don't think Interscope was able to get his assets. I think Biggie died with a little bit of debt too. I think Big Pun died with some debt. Pretty much all the rappers died in debt. They owe the label tons of money. But Diddy is cooked for sure. But the one motherfucker who is completely cooked is R. Kelly, because they took control of his money. Not only did they put him in prison, but they took his assets from him and spread that shit out amongst everybody else as an excuse to keep playing his music. And you know what? Don't be surprised if these chicks don't turn around and sell that stuff. What the fuck can they do with a certain percentage of R. Kelly's royalties? They can't really do anything with that stuff except collect the passive income. But if a label or some rich benefactor shows up, offers her a ton of money to take her share of this off of her hands, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? The Michael Jackson thing is the most suspicious of them all. It's incredibly suspicious. I feel like a conspiracy theorist when it comes to the Michael Jackson situation. There's no excuse for that man to have been broke. And he wasn't like traditionally broke, but he died like with some serious debt that his family, for some odd reason, couldn't manage to pay off without selling every fucking thing that he owned. You had to sell everything he owned. You couldn't just sell some of the other assets that he owned, like the Beatles and all that kind of stuff, and cover this. No, you couldn't do that. You had to sell everything? Huh. Okay. It's all very suspicious, and I'm pretty sure if we had a real legal system, somebody would be looking into this stuff. Like, how does this keep happening? How do these labels get that kind of, that they can just assume? I think they took Michael Jackson's assets from his family. It's crazy. How are they getting away with this? Well, the obvious choice is people are looking the other way. Don't be surprised if in a few years Diddy ain't got no money and he starts selling stuff. That seems like the move, right? He's been really hurt financially by paying all these. He had 6 or 7 lawyers, man. 6 or 7 lawyers. And he's still going to end up going to prison. It might be for a shorter amount of time. He's still going to go to prison. He may have to do a couple of more months. In a few years, he's not going to have the money that he wants. He's going to have to sell some stuff. And we'll see, I guess, at that point, whether he owns Biggie's royalties or not. If he owns Biggie's albums, his music. Because if he does, that's the most expensive thing he's got. But it's been 30 years, so it might have reverted back to Mrs. Wallace before she passed. Dennis King says a lot of Diddy assets are in other people's names. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if you're doing something illegal like that. I wouldn't keep that shit in my name either. It's probably like in his children's name and shit like that, right? But I'm definitely suspicious of what's going on here. You said, remember, Irv Gotti beat the feds, he still end up in debt. Yeah, because the whole point is to crush you financially. The average person would not have been able to beat these cases. And then, people are like, this is the system for, the rich. Only the rich can afford to fight these cases. It's like, yeah, because the government has endless amounts of fucking money. It's not like the system is rigged for the rich. The system is naturally rigged because the government has endless money. The only person who could fight a case like this financially is a rich man. Any other poor man, even if he was innocent, would have looked at this thing and said, oh, fuck. I gotta pay how much to fight this case? I might as well just do the fucking time. you know? I'll never be able to pay none of this stuff back. I'll be on these lawyers for the rest of my life. But if you're rich, you can afford to fight this endless government bureaucracy. And then all these fucking motions. And these lawyers are getting paid per hour. Kicking them in the ass. Diddy's not going to have any money in 2 or 3 years. And he's going to need to sell some stuff. And then we're going to find out what he owns. He's going to figure it out. We're going to start seeing some tables moving. Then you're going to learn what this was really about. That's when you're going to learn what this is really about. That's the quiet part. When he might file for bankruptcy, it might just be financial troubles for Sean Diddy Combs. The embittered hip hop mogul owns $50 million in back debt and $120 million to his lawyers. He's like, oh my God, what is he going to do? Yes, he's going to start selling brands. That's what they want, though. They want him to sell his stuff because they're done with him. And by they, I mean the industry. He's a pervert. He's a weirdo. They don't want anything to do with this guy. And now he's tarnished. He can't work. Do what exactly? Who's going to want to work for this fucking guy? It's the same question you got to ask for Vince. Who's going to want to work with this guy? At least Vince has so many people in his corner because he basically, to put it, in kind of extreme terms, he raised a lot of these wrestlers like John Cena and Randy Orton and a lot of these guys. He was a father figure to a lot of these guys. So the question of who was going to work for him is probably like those guys, But Diddy, he wasn't really a great producer. It's not like he can make beats. He was never a beat maker. What the fuck is Diddy going to do? He's been trading on being Diddy for 25 years. So what is he going to do? He's going to start selling stuff. Diddy has been a brand unto himself since 2000 at least. He ain't done shit else. He might have had a hit song here and there, but it's mostly just been he's a character. And now the character's been ruined irreparably. How is he going to make any money? You said it's in his mother's name. We're talking about his what's the name? All the assets and stuff. WWE TNA says Diddy needs to go the way of Russell Simmons. Get out of this country and move to Bali and don't look back. Yeah, he needs to move like far away to the other side of the globe. I wouldn't move to anywhere in Europe. He's gonna end up being fucked. He needs to move that stuff. He needs to move somewhere else. Sure. See, if he really did put like all these different, it's very smart for him to do that though. And he likely, not saying he would have saw this coming, but he should have been. This shows that he was prepared for it. Not that he maybe saw it coming, but that he was prepared for it. By putting these items in other people's names like this, it shows foresight that you had an idea. That's what the RICO shit was about, right? That you were using all of these organizations to fund your criminal activity, but he was just using his own private bank account, from what it looks like, to pay these broads. Now that's a difference between Vince and Diddy, because I think Vince was paying these chicks with his own personal money, but it was benefiting WWE, you know, and that's what he got jammed up on by the SEC. But that was it. Get ready for the oil sales. He needs to just make his own baby oil. How about that? I mean, just make this thing work for you. Diddy brand baby oil, only the finest for your highness. It's the D, the I, the D, the D, the Y, the D, the I, the D. It's Diddy. Oil up is Diddy. I fucking hate this guy. I really do. I don't like Sean Combs. But I walked away from this not being a big fan of Cass, and it just is what it is. And I know this thing is really going to turn into a disaster for Janelle Grant, because this thing, it didn't work. Cassie walked away with a personal fortune, but that dude is not in prison, and that's probably where she wanted him to be. And I would not be surprised if Cassie doesn't show up or turn up in a morgue somewhere within the next 5 years. I would not be surprised at all. She probably gonna end up in an Amy Winehouse kind of situation. It's not like she can go on tour and make any fucking money. They're probably gonna blame the trauma of this trial. It's really gonna be the D, the I, the D, the D, the Y, and put the hit on her. Hold up, oil up. She, if I was Diddy, she'd never get another good night's sleep ever, ever. I would be looking for anything, and I would be funding lawsuits against her ass for the rest of her fucking life. She get into a car accident, I would be funding that lawsuit so that that person will get like $10 million from Cassie, because she ain't got no way to make money outside of suing people. So I would just go full Peter Thiel if I was Puff. I'm not even gonna lie to you. As soon as I get out of prison, I'm looking for anything to hit Cassie ass with. You know, anything. Get her divorced and have the man take half her cash. She get into a fucking car accident. I'm like, look, she's got $30 million. All you gotta do is say my neck and my back, and you can walk around with 10, 15 mil. I'm gonna even pay for your lawyer. I'll ruin her fucking life. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm petty like that though. Oh no, she not going back. She can't go back. She severed ties. She can't go back. And if you're Diddy, why do you want her back? What good is she gonna do for you? Like, it's just a waste of time. It's a waste. I think so. And if I was her husband, that's what I would do. I'd wait like a year or two and be like, irreconcilable differences. I want half. Irreconcilable differences stemming from listening about how my girlfriend slash wife had sex with multiple prostitutes and got STDs and all this sort of stuff. I want half. I want half. Ooh, that's nasty work though, isn't it? Splitting the we'll figure out whether this guy really wants whether he wants the honey or whether he wants the money. He comes across like a guy who wants the honey though. You might just want to be loved up with Cassie. Any other trio would be sitting back scheming on how to get some money out of Cassie. He said Cassie's kids are completely cooked and cursed from this point on. 9 times out of 10, people only know Cassie from this. And as long as nobody knows who her children are, they should be fine. Like Superhead, I don't know none of her kids. She's cooked beyond belief. She wrote 2 books about fucking random rappers and Shaq and Ice-T and all these other guys she didn't supposedly had sex with. I know she had a kid, I think, and that kid should probably be an adult by now. Nobody knows who that woman is. The laundromat girl who had a baby by Lil Wayne, nobody knows who that broad is. Like, these hoes can go out here and have babies and disappear because nobody knows who they are. Like, it's not even an issue about whether Cassie's kid's going to be, Cassie's kid's going to be embarrassed when he or she grows up to see what his or her mother were doing. But ultimately, it ain't like somebody gonna look at you like, you're Cassie's son. How does P. Diddy's nut taste? Ain't nobody gonna do nothing like that. You said she only has the one son with Cool G Rap? Yeah. And I know that kid's got to be an adult by now because that kid was born before she wrote the book, I think. Wasn't that, didn't she have that baby with Cool G Rap before she even wrote that book? And she wrote that book in like 2004. So that kid's got to be, if that kid was born before that book was written, that kid is almost 30. And I don't remember what Superhead looked like anymore. Alex had 3 kids with this STD-ridden chick. He likes the honey more than the money, but now he got both. Let's see how long it lasts. Let's see. I hope it lasts a really long time. I hope it does. I don't think so, though. I don't think so. I think he's going to want something she ain't going to want to pay for it. He's going to be like, all of a sudden, irreconcilable differences. Give me half. Take half of everything. Cut the couch in half. God damn it. Like, these chicks are just doing stuff and they're out here having babies with rappers. That's the thing that was so weird to me. Like, the other girl Diddy was shacked up with, she had a child with 50 Cent. Why is she doing this? Why is she fucking the basketball team and the football team for Diddy? Her baby daddy is 50 Cent. Why is she doing this? Because Diddy offered her a lifestyle. This is the kind of girl she is. There's pictures of that girl with 50 Cent. They all hooked up. They're taking love pictures and hearts and shit. Pictures, they putting them in frames, for God's sake. If you you a real in love motherfucker if you printing out pictures and putting them in frames in the 2000s. Ain't nobody taking pictures and putting them in frames anymore. 50 Cent and that girl got pictures in frames on the wall. Family fucking pictures. And this hoe out here sucking and fucking 3-4 dudes for Diddy. Why? Lifestyle choice. 50 Cent left her, and she needed to continue her lifestyle. So she just moved on to Diddy. Now 50 Cent is funding this documentary destroying Diddy. I haven't seen even one episode of it because it's that obviously biased and bullshit. I don't even have any entertainment. I can't get any entertainment out of it. Like, Surviving R. Kelly was ludicrous, but at least there was some entertainment value to it. I think anything 50 Cent does in this vein is going to be so mean spirited and unfair that there's really no point in me watching it. But that chick had a baby with 50 Cent, and she was still out doing this stuff. That should tell you what it's about. It ain't about being loved up or hugged up with anybody. It's about that moolah. It's about a lifestyle. That's what she wants. She wants a lifestyle. She wants to be on the yacht sipping champagne in the middle of February. Like some of these OnlyFans chicks who be flying out to Dubai to get shit and pissed on. This is what they want, man. This is what they getting. All right, y'all. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your 4th of July. I guess I'll see you guys. Oh, yeah. The Wu-Tang concert is this Tuesday. I want to let you guys know how that goes. I'm very excited for that. 50, you said Rick Ross put a sex tape out of 50 Baby Mama. Ugh. These niggas is playing real dirty, extremely dirty. They do stuff like that. I know they 50 Cent took Rick Ross' baby mama on a shopping spree or something like that, and it was all in the magazine. That's beyond beef. That's just gross shit these guys are doing, man. That's gross stuff. These guys got battle rap beef, and they're just trying to make revenge porn for the guy's baby mama and taking a nigga baby mama on shopping sprees. Like, it's weird stuff. Just really weird stuff. But y'all enjoy 4th of July. I'm gonna talk to you guys later. Peace out.